Good morning. I am Dawn Abamondi, and today on the Women's Franchise Committee podcast, Her Success, I have the fortunate opportunity to speak with Betsy Hamm, CEO of Duck Donuts. Betsy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're very excited to be able to share a little bit about your story. You gave so freely to the Women's Franchise Committee in the winter and all last year, preparing for the annual leadership conference that is held every year at the IFA convention. And so I just want to share a little bit with our audience about you and your background, and then we'll get into your story. So Betsy Hamm is the CEO of Duck Donuts. She oversees the direction and organization and leads all of the development of the company's long and short-term goals, as well as strategic initiatives. She is committed to building and protecting a 100+ unit chain, growing franchise brand by generating awareness and driving revenue. In her previous role as Chief Operating Officer, she oversaw operations, marketing, and business development. Betsy joined Duck Donuts with 15 years experience as the marketing director for Hershey Entertainment and Resorts, a world-class entertainment and hospitality company that owns and operates many of the suite attractions, resorts, and entertainment venues across Hershey, Pennsylvania. Betsy, is there anything you would like to add? And then tell us a little bit more about your story.
Sure. No, that was a great recap for sure. So, as you mentioned, I started my career off at Hershey Entertainment and Resorts in marketing, and had the opportunity to work for a really well-established brand. Of course, everybody knows Hershey Park and Hershey Chocolate. And having that opportunity to really grow in different roles in marketing through the years was a really cool opportunity. But really just kind of kept an ear out for any potential opportunities that would come along. And a few years ago, actually 7 years ago, a friend of mine had said that Duck Donuts was opening their corporate headquarters here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is close to where I live. And they were looking for someone to come in and build the marketing department. And at the time, I had not even heard of Duck Donuts. I had never been to the Outer Banks. So I wasn't familiar with the brand, which is, of course, where they started in Duck, North Carolina. But I reached out to two of my friends who always visited the Outer Banks and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of this Duck Donuts brand?" They reached out for an interview. Like, what do you think? And they both were emphatic that I had to take this interview. Duck Donuts was the best thing ever, best donuts ever. I mean, they were so excited. And as someone who wasn't aware of the brand, I was really confused why they were so excited about donuts. So that obviously piqued my curiosity as a marketing person. So ended up sitting down with the founder, who was the CEO at the time, and had a good conversation of taking this brand that started in the Outer Banks and making it a national household name, and people who knew it, who loved it. But let's make it across the country and actually now across the globe. So ended up taking a leap. I was very happy at Hershey, and again, a very well-established brand, and kind of going a really different direction where this was sort of like a startup, right? They had 20 locations when I started at Duck Donuts, and I was the first outside that friends and family circle, essentially. So I think we both took a leap of faith that this was a good fit for us. But it was really great to be able to come into Duck Donuts and help to establish everything from, like, let's start at the basis of creating logos and consistency and photos of donuts. So just as that happened, I obviously was working really close with the operations team. Of course, everybody was wearing a lot of hats back then with such few employees. And about a year into it, Russ, the founder and CEO, came to me and said, I think you should oversee the operations team. And oh, actually, he said, "I think I'm going to promote you." And I said, "Oh, we didn't even have titles at the time. So I'd like you to oversee the operations team too." So I had to tell him that most of the time they don't put marketing people in charge of operations. That usually makes people on both sides twitch a little bit. But I always worked very closely with the ops team. And even at Hershey, everything we did, of course, was aligned with, launching roller coasters and new product innovation. So it wasn't as much of a dramatic switch as I thought. I will never, and at the time was never the operations expert, but I knew that I had to have the right people on my team to help round that out. I was good at the strategy and moving things forward and connecting the dots amongst the marketing and ops team. So so fast forward a few years later, when the founder decided to stepped down and wanted to sell the company at that time. I during COVID especially had really he let me take the lead in a lot of from a leadership standpoint of what was going on with our franchisees and companies. So it was really a good test that I didn't even know that I was being tested at the time. So as we talked about this transition and bringing in private equity, it just sort of dawned on me that I had been so integral and so much of what the success was of Duck Donuts that I didn't want someone else to come in, I guess you could say, and take it a different direction. I felt like we had so much positive momentum. We had a really strong team. So I raised my hand and said, I'm interested. I want to be the CEO of Duck Donuts. So here we are 2 years later. Certainly not a path that I would have ever thought to be a COO, let alone a CEO, when my basis for so much of my career was in marketing.
Tremendous story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have follow-up questions to
Sure.
that. So similar to you, I did not start out where I am now in marketing. I went to school for engineering, worked very closely with the marketing team. They trusted me. And so when an opportunity became available, I moved from engineering to marketing. So can you talk a little bit about how that is important for young people who are listening to consider in their career?
As you start your career and you start to be exposed to maybe other areas of business that you're not familiar with or that you didn't know that you potentially had some interest. And I think being able to have that exposure and early on in my career, I had that opportunity to work really closely with operations team members and understand, what their thought process was and what their goals were. And having that exposure, I think, opens up your eyes to jobs and different roles that you maybe didn't know that existed. I always say if somebody would have told me at 25 that I would be a CEO of an international donut franchise, I would think that that's crazy because I never had those intentions. If somebody would said, "Oh, you could be a CMO, VP of marketing," that would have made sense because I thought that was the career path that I was on. But it certainly took a turn. But I think that's just why it's so important to get all that exposure that you can as you're growing in your career, no matter what age, because you may find that you have an interest or an ability to be part of something that you never planned for.
Absolutely. I think that is wonderful advice for people to listen. Maybe they'll replay that and think about it a little bit as they go. There's no worries about changing what you do today in the future. And one of those transitions, I think also when I was researching your background, is that you left Hershey and came to a franchise brand. And so I think almost everybody that I have met in franchising, they say that they didn't start out in franchising. They found their way here. They love the idea of it. And so it is now the profession and the industry that they have chosen. Can you talk a little bit about how that may have been, aside from your friends who were so excited about the brand, what did you think about franchising after your background at Hershey for so long?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself into from a franchising perspective. Being in hospitality and tourism, of course, it's all about taking care of the customer and relationships and building the brand. So there were some similarities. I had some experience working with restaurants and that type of thing, but I never had exposure to franchising. So, when I started at Duck Donuts, it was a little bit of a culture shock of like, okay, how does this work? And at the end of the day, it's what we have to remind ourselves and our team of all the time is we have these um, franchise partners who want to be small business owners, right? And they invest a ton of money, sometimes their life savings into our brand, and they have the expectation of our team providing the tools and resources they need in order to succeed and grow their small business. And that's a huge responsibility. And it's one that we certainly take seriously. And sometimes, there's the awkwardness of the relationship between a franchisor and franchisee. So, especially in the beginning, it was figuring out like, okay, so this little bit of tension is normal between a franchisor and franchisee. And what I appreciate so much about our industry is everyone is so willing to share. So, when I started at Duck, not having that experience, I was like, is this normal? Like, is how does this work? Is there going to be pushback? Just I didn't know
Totally
how that
normal.
relationship worked. Yeah. So I started making friends with other industry executives to say like, hey, like, tell me how, do you remember when you were an emerging brand and how are your relationships and how does it work with the franchise advisory council and all of that? And I just appreciate so many people who have been so open and willing to share their journey because that helped me to be like, okay, we're good. This is normal. This is how we can maybe work through some of these issues or opportunities quicker. But it was very eye-opening. And I just think, franchising is such an amazing industry that people don't understand if they're not involved in some capacity, and just the number of jobs and the ability for people to be in charge of their own personal wealth is really awesome. So we are in such a unique industry that I just hope can continue to grow and get the support it needs, because we're giving people that opportunity to own their own business.
Right, absolutely. So some of what you just shared reminds me of the annual leadership conference and what very honestly and authentically shared with our audience. So fortunately for the 300 and something people that were in the room in Las Vegas, they were able to hear about challenges and accomplishments that you and your entire team have made over the last few years. Can you share a little bit about what the highlights were from annual leadership conference in relation to what you were just talking about?
Sure. So as I mentioned, it was a family-run brand with 20 locations. So, and nobody with franchising experience when I started. So we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to figure things out as we went, and trying to build out the team and have the process and the structure and everything that was needed in order for us to be successful and to support our franchise partners. So, there was certainly a lot of bumps along the way. And then as really we got to 2 years ago, we hit our 100 location mark, which of course is a big deal. Only 16% of franchise brands get to that point. So that was really exciting. That's also when we were selling. So now we have private equity involved and new leadership with me stepping in. So there was this tipping point essentially of, what got us to 100 shops isn't going to get us to 2, 3, 400 shops. So I think what's been so fascinating about this journey at Duck Donuts is, as an emerging brand, it changes like every year or two. We're not established. We don't have 500 and we just kind of add some additional staffing. We're constantly evaluating how we're structured and how our marketing is. We don't have big ad budgets, so we're trying to do the best that we can. And we have markets that are spread out. So, we have these challenges that I believe most emerging brands face, that just keep changing. So, ensuring that we stay ahead of that, which to me, the biggest piece of that has been the team, and ensuring that we have the right people and the right seats. And sometimes those seats change. So, making sure that we're bringing in the right talent. And now, I mean, our team is amazing. The resumes, when you look at where everybody has worked over their, careers, is phenomenal. We've had these really big brands and people with this great experience that are helping us to be more successful faster. And hopefully with, we're going to make mistakes, of course, but hopefully with making less mistakes as we continue to grow. And then, of course, on top of that, it's everything from, let's see, we've endured COVID, we've endured supply chain, labor issues, now inflation, now interest rates are high. I mean, it's just like one challenge after another. And it's, we try to keep the team focused on, all right, here's the things that we can control. Let's continue to focus on how we can drive down cost for our franchisees and how do we increase transactions. But then there's all this other stuff sort of floating in the background that it's really hard from inflation or supply chain or labor. So, trying to do the best that we can with all of these outside forces has been, it's been a struggle. I mean, and obviously it's been a struggle for a lot of brands, but again, just continuing to stay focused on that and being aligned with our franchise partners is really critical for us to be successful.
A lot of information packed into that. So, I think what you talk about franchise partners, I hear that terminology. And so you talk about your team, and I think that's a little bit humble on your part. And then coming in, I love the fact that you wanted to protect the brand and become the CEO when private equity became a part of the brand. And really kind of carry on maybe a little bit of what the founders had done and taking it from Duck, North Carolina, all the way through to, many, many states across the country. There's one only 5.5 minutes away, unless I hit the light, and then it takes a little bit longer to
I
get
love that
to.
it's 5.5 minutes. That's great.
It's so close. It's just really not good for my cardio, but it is a treat. We do allow ourselves. And so I think that's one of the things too that I love about Duck Donuts is you really create happy smiles with your customers who come through the door. And you just celebrated National Donut Day. So tell me a little bit about that, and how do you bring the entire team from, the corporate office and the franchise development team all the way through to the franchisees and execute that. And name some of the successes that came out of that day. I saw some numbers on your news feed, and if you don't share them, I will.
Okay. National Donut Day is so fun. It's like Christmas, right? I mean, there's so many holidays and food holidays, but people get so excited about donuts. There's just that love for donuts. And what's cool about National Donut Day, it actually started in 1938 with the Salvation Army, and it was their way to honor the women who served donuts to the soldiers during World War I, and they were called the Donut Lassie. So I love that connection of that. So something that started about giving back and supporting your community and recognition is now this holiday where of course we celebrate with donuts. But in addition to giving out free donuts in our shops, the great part about that is we really encourage our franchisees to give back in their local community and be involved with the Salvation Army or some other local charity. So, for example, our corporate shop here in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, we had some of our corporate team members out at the Salvation Army at the food pantry, giving out the food pantry groceries, but then also every client got a half dozen donuts. So it's a big party, fun day where there's just so much energy and excitement. Like I just love the energy and excitement that comes around the holiday and just all the media coverage. And what's been really cool is now when they name like the national publications name where to get donuts, like we're up there with the big dogs who have, thousands of locations. And here we are with our 130-ish locations and we're getting headlines, with the big ones, which has been really exciting. So just the fun, excitement and energy around that and getting more people in the shop. And, we always say to our franchisees, this is a great day to give back because you're giving away free donuts and a lot of them are your loyal customers. But it's also a day where people make tri-duck donuts for the first time. So ensuring that we're offering that superior product with an exceptional customer experience each and every time is really important because that could be the way of getting a new customer to come back. So I love the day. I think our franchisees probably have a love-hate relationship because it is so busy. So of course we're very happy to see the sales at that day, but it's certainly a stress on the operation. I think that's been the good thing over the last few years is we see a lot more online orders. When I was in our local shop, they had a ton of orders, people picking up dozens of donuts to take to their office to celebrate, which is great to see. So it's just a fun day full of so much excitement, and it also kind of kicks off to when we are now getting into more of our peak busy season during the summer. With kids out of school. So, and we're about celebrations. People celebrate with duck donuts for their, birthdays, holidays, special events, weddings. We do a ton of weddings. So it's kind of fun that we're part of everyone's celebrations and then to have our customers come in and be part of our celebration of donuts.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And who could be stressed out if if they're getting the opportunity to enjoy a, hot, freshly iced and topped donut.
Right.
So I know there is stress in that because I was in that kind of industry, but hopefully they're walking away and they're like, oh, this was fun, even though we had to wait in line for
Right.
a long
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
So you've talked a little bit about the operations in terms of the franchise partners. What do they do every day? I'd also like to know, what do you do every day? Like, what's your role? What is your week like? What is your month like? There might be some people listening who are like, what does a CEO do?
What do I do? That's a great
What do you
question.
do?
I try to balance my time for sure. So obviously the big picture is that, I'm responsible for the vision and where we're going and really launching that strategic plan of, okay, if we're going to open 40 shops or 45 shops every year for the next 3 years, how are we going to get there? So handling that vision and painting a picture standpoint, obviously the financial piece, and then making sure I have the right leadership team and the right team. It has that trickle down effect where, again, I'm not the expert in much or anything. So ensuring I have the right, VP of marketing, operations, et cetera. So ensuring that the team is supported and that leadership team has what they need in order to support the rest of the team. And then of course the franchisees, right? They're basically our customers and they're our partners. So ensuring that they are happy and getting what they need from a support standpoint as well. So I really divide my time, I would say probably in three buckets. One is with the team and primarily the leadership team. But again, we're small. So I'm talking to everybody on our 30-ish person team. So dealing with our team, having conversations with their franchise partners, and then really representing the brand. So, kind of like IFA and attending conferences and speaking, doing these types of things, just trying to get the awareness and the exposure out there of the brand. So, really, it falls into those three buckets. So, in the springtime, my travel schedule was crazy. Like I was somewhere every week between conferences and visiting franchisees. We did regional meetings. But now I don't really have too much travel for the summer. I'll go to openings. So now it's like, okay, how are we doing with our strategic plan? We're halfway through the year, which is crazy. So having those check-ins with the team and holding the team accountable. And then, of course, still continuing just to have calls and conversations with the franchisees. I think it's really important for me. Despite having a strong team, I want to be in touch with what's going on and how they're feeling and what they're struggling with. So having those conversations with the franchisees is really important to me too. So sort of like a divide and conquer amongst those three areas.
Perfect. Um, so with all of that professional role, very busy, a growing brand, having 30 people under your tutelage and guidance, as well as over 100 and 30 franchisees in other countries as well.
Yes.
So um,
Yeah.
you're also a mom. You
Yep.
have two girls who
Yep.
are teenagers, almost teenagers,
Right.
and it's summer, so family time. How do you balance, that personal role as a mom and a mentor to them, um, and working, as a
Yeah.
CEO?
So, first, I always say it's not balancing, right? Because that would make it
Yeah.
even. So, it's juggling. So, everything is in the air and everything from like, your friends, your family, like your just personal life, your work life. I think at the end of the day, you can never do it all well. So, there are some days that I think I probably stink as a mom and I miss, things because I'm traveling. I miss volleyball games or dropping kids off at practices, and then it all falls on my husband. And then there's days that like I probably miss things at work because I had to deal with family. So it's just juggling and knowing that you're never going to be awesome at everything all the time. And I think accepting help and support. I think as women we want to do it all and have this vision of being like the superwoman where I can handle everything and I can handle it by myself. And the reality is nobody can. Like you will go nuts. So you have to have a support system, and it looks different for everyone. So it may be a supportive husband, or maybe it's the grandparents and the kids lives, or whatever it is. You've got to rely on the support and help of that, and do things like order your groceries online or whatever it is. I sometimes over multitask, I think. So, trying to really at times focus and be present. Like, okay, if I'm not working, like and everyone's guilty of this. We're so integrated, right? Our phones are in our hands. We can respond to emails, text at any time of the day, which sometimes is amazing. Other times I think it's a distraction. So, just trying to be present in what I'm focused in. And, my girls are 15 and 12. So they're at that age, but they're observant, right? They are observant, and they are is let's see, opinionated, I guess. It's a fair word of what's going on. But they think this whole Duck Donut CEO women thing is pretty cool. So that's been very helpful that they look at me and realize like, oh wow, mom, like you're a CEO. Like, I don't want to say they brag about it, but they understand the coolness of that that's not like everyone else's mom. So I think that they appreciate that. And I love that they support that and get excited about that. And for whatever they choose in their life, great, what their future careers look like, or being a stay-at-home mom or whatever it is. I think just having them see women in roles like this is really important. And even with their friends, like they'll say stuff too, like, so what is your job? Like, what do you do? Like, tell, and I love that. I love that they're interested and that they're seeing a woman in these types of roles and being able to juggle it all. And then it's fine. I mean, so far they seem okay. So it's good.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask you if you had advice to young women who are looking to get into their career. I think you just gave a whole bunch of good advice for that. Is there anything that you didn't share, that you would want, young people to know as they're, finishing high
Yeah.
school and heading off into their career?
I think the one of the biggest things to me that has helped to make me successful was relationships. So, I think I go back to even like high school or college and having relationships with your professors or your teachers that they knew you existed and trying to go above and beyond. And now, like as you're going through college, it's, are you talking to your professors? Are you getting internships? I think the whole relationships networking thing is critical to success, because a lot of where you end up is because you knew somebody who mentioned this opportunity to you or got you to an interview. I just find relationships to be really the key to, I think, my success. And that's how I think I really got to where I was. I had a great relationship with the founder and built that trust and credibility with him. And as I continue to take on more, it's important for me to have a great relationship with our franchisees, our team, whatever it is. And even now, like I mentioned earlier, within the industry, there's been so many now CEOs that I have connected with that have been so helpful to me from that mentoring standpoint. I think that's key. So just making sure you're networking, finding a mentor, those types of things, reaching out to somebody whose role you think you would like to have someday, and having that conversation. How did you get to where you are? What did you do? Like those types of things are so beneficial. So I think relationships are really key to being successful.
Absolutely. You talked about networking, relationships, asking, being involved. A lot of wonderful advice in there. Um, is there a moment in your history that you think, or um, just other, is there, it comes full circle, I think, too.
Right.
So maybe there's something that you wanted to share that might inspire our audience listening today.
We talked about not always knowing where you're going to end up and where you're going, and I think that is so important, because I think some people really do get stuck on, this is what I'm going to be, and I'm going to be it by I'm 25. I want to be a director when I'm 30, or whatever it is. So I think it's just keeping your options open and being resilient. I mean, this journey to get to CEO has not been sunshine and roses. I mean, there was times where somebody said I wasn't good enough for a job or the right fit, or maybe it was the timing. So, I think the resilience piece of this is really important, because there's going to be bumps, and it's not going to be this straight trajectory up to, again, to whatever kind of role you want. So I think be able to be resilient and keeping your options open is really important, because it doesn't always go the way you plan, and sometimes that's a great thing, for sure. It's have to keep your options open and just keep fighting for where you want to be.
Is that what you would tell yourself 20 years ago?
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah. 100%. And I think especially because, when I came out of college, and when I was at Hershey, I was getting promoted pretty quickly. So I was like, oh, it's all just so easy and fun. And of course, that's not, that's not really how the rest of that path went.
No, it never is. It always
No.
seems hard when you're in the middle of it, and then you look back and you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. But
So,
I think it's good. No one's going to have this completely easy journey, and that's a good thing. It makes you stronger. It makes you understand maybe where your areas of strengths and opportunities lie. So I think it's a good thing. You definitely become a better person for it. It's easy to
mhm.
say that after.
Oh, for sure. And you can't go back and say, oh, if I hadn't done this, then, because then you wouldn't be where you are, and you wouldn't have accomplished or overcome that struggle. And maybe you wouldn't be a CEO. Maybe you would
Right.
have stayed in marketing or gone. I don't think you would have gone into engineering. That isn't usually a
Yeah,
path
that's a
that people
big
take.
jump.
But no, so that's great. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up today?
I think we hit the big things: the relationships, the resilience, and support. I think are just key to be able to be successful. So, I think just being able to continue to focus on that, no matter where you want to end up, is key to being successful and hopefully being happy.
Wonderful. It is about being happy and making sure that you choose things that just make you smile every day.
Right.
And definitely a donut can
And
do that.
donuts,
So,
yeah. So I mean,
and
that's what we
donuts.
say. We're sprinkling happiness around the globe. So it's fun to see people get so happy about a donut. So I love it. So it's a fun opportunity for us.
Perfect. Well, Betsy, thank you so much for sharing your background, your insights on franchising, about being a CEO and a mom. So many wonderful things.
Thank you.
What I'd
Thank you
like
so
to
much for
do,
having me.
oh, sure. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person at the next upcoming conference. I want to say thank you again to Betsy Hamm for spending time with us on the Her Success Women's Franchise Committee podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the Women's Franchise Committee and Women's Franchise Network chapters that are either open and operating or opening soon across the country, please visit the International Franchise Association website at franchise.org and look up the Women's Franchise Committee and Women's Franchise Network. You can also find more editions of Her Success podcast